Alrighty folks, how's it going? It is time for another 40k rant. If you like the video and you want to help me out, or you want to just help me out in general, please like the video. It does wonders for all of my content going forwards, and it makes the YouTube gods smile on us that little bit more. So if you like what I do, that's the thing to do, alright? So today's 40k rant won't be as much as an angry rant, it'll be a yearning rant. It's a rant that I've been wanting to go through for a long time. Warhammer 40,000 for me is one of those most epic settings, and that's why we love it. And this video will be about the fact that Warhammer 40,000 is missing its greatest video game, in my opinion, from its library of games. It is a dark and kind of bonkers setting, but when you dig under the hood to see what is actually going on, you really start to scratch on some amazing themes. Take for example the Rogue Traders, such an old piece of lore from way back in the day given full life. This one obscure corner of the 40k universe quite literally has enough meat on its bones to produce a game like Rogue Trader, the role-playing game by Owlcat Games, that can last up to 70 hours. I do not think there are many settings that can do something this large with something so sidelined and obscure from their own universe. This is the size of Warhammer 40,000, a cataclysmic setting of constant war, but also of worlds just living out their lives like we see in the Eisenhorn novels. The reason those novels took off in the first place was because they showed you the underside of Warhammer 40,000. You don't see any Space Marines or anything like that for the most part. Instead, you see what you are fighting for. Many worlds in which people live out relatively normal lives. The scope of 40k is mind-boggling, and I think a setting such as this is almost too intimidating for people to take on and do a proper big game, like I'm going to explain later on. If you've seen the thumbnail, you probably know where my thoughts are going with the kind of game that 40k is missing from its library, but we'll get to that in a minute. This is hinted at in many Warhammer 40k lore tidbits about world classifications, night worlds, agri worlds, standard world, thing like that, but is never really expanded upon in anything but the Eisenhorn novels in seeking to present Warhammer 40,000 as a place in which you could actually live. We all know that meme, right? You could live in Star Wars, but oh no, you would not want to live in 40k. Well, I think a lot of people tend to see only the grim darkness of Warhammer 40,000, but to be honest, when you see them saying, I'd hate to live in 40k, I don't think they've read Eisenhorn, or that they've looked under the hood at what's actually in 40k as a setting, beyond the grimdark and the horror that is obviously out there. There are worlds in those books that I would absolutely love to see and live on, Goodrun being an example. Even as a common citizen, so not even as a noble. There are worlds that are very much like the world we live on now, as in Earth, right now, that are in 40k. They just don't get the Eternal War headlines, and so they are rarely shown. But make no mistake, if you want your setting to have depth, you need to show these worlds, because now you know what you're fighting for. Now you know what the aliens want to claim, now you know what Chaos wants to claim, and if you're the Imperium, you know what you're fighting to protect. It's very important. Why am I going on about all this? Well, a few years ago, I made a video talking about the one game Warhammer 40,000 is missing from its library. We have a multitude of video games set in the universe, from real-time strategy games to board strategy to first-person shooters, horde shooters, online shooters, mobile games, and now the Rogue Trader top-down isometric old-school role-playing game. That was one of the games that I thought was missing, and now it's here. I wanted to re-examine the ideas I put forward in that old video and perhaps give it more life and more vim, more context. Because I think something that Warhammer 40,000 is missing is an epic, single-player, role-playing game in the style of the first 3 Mass Effect games. Alright. So, that's all well and good. But why have I picked Mass Effect as a series to follow? First things first, I'm not saying a 40k game needs to be just like Mass Effect, okay? I'm saying it needs to be in the same spirit. You know, it needs to be the same kind of RPG, is what I'm saying, alright? Okay. So why Mass Effect as a base for our explanation of what I think is missing from the 40k spectrum here? Well, there are a few reasons, with the top one being a game like this would sell like crazy. There is a definite gap in the market for a game like Mass Effect with the self-implosion that BioWare seemed to be determined to go through. I am well aware that RPGs of this size are expensive, and I'm well aware this is a dream project, a pie-in-the-sky project that I'm talking about here. I'm not expecting a company the size of Owlcat or the size of even Obsidian to come along and say, hey, let's make this game, shall we, right? Because they're not big enough, they don't have the right amount of money to go and make a game like this. And if it's made by somebody like Bethesda, if it's made by somebody like, God forbid, BioWare, then it won't be the same 40k setting that we all know and love. They will neuter it. They will take away all the grimdark, all the things that make it what it is. And they'll ruin it. Right? I wouldn't trust BioWare to run a fucking Tesco's store. Never mind doing a game of this size anymore, alright? It just doesn't work for me. So, in terms of studios who could pull this off, maybe CD Projekt Red, but they have got their hands tied. You know, this would be a game for 10, 15 years down the road. You know what I mean? When they're free up, and it'd be something that I would pitch to them as something to start working on. You know, right from now, because it would sell like crazy. Even if just 40k fans bought it, it would still sell an amazing amount of copies. Whether it would make enough to earn your money back, I don't know, but I think it would. In all honesty, I think it would. In terms of because of the starvation people have for a game like Mass Effect. You know, a game like Mass Effect in the 40k universe would blow most other games out of the water. Absolutely, absolutely. Right. There may be another studio out there eventually, you know, who have really big ties to big corporations, to big money that can do it. I don't know. Anyway, if a Warhammer 40,000 RPG like Mass Effect was announced and had a team behind it that did not shy away from the setting's more coarse, grimdark aspects, I believe the excitement for such a project would far eclipse what we are seeing with Space Marine 2 even. It just would. It just would. I think anybody watching this video will agree with me as well. Absolutely. If a game like this was announced, everybody would lose the shit. If it was in the same vein as a Mass Effect game, where you the main character, are in 40k, and you've got companions, you've got all these things going on, dude, close the show. It's going to be amazing. Also, let's take a look at what the original Mass Effect trilogy allowed you to do. The main selling points of the game I'm trying to sell you on here. There's 3 of them. The first one, you take the lead role in a space epic against a slowly revealing, terrifying enemy. Cool, huh? Number 2, you explore the galaxy in your own ship with your own crew, each with their own personalities, needs, and desires. Number 3, you grow a team of badass mercs, playing your character your way to decide the fate of the galaxy. Or sector in this case. Right? Those are the 3 main things Mass Effect allows you to do, and those are the 3 main tenets I'm using to build my perfect Warhammer 40,000 epic RPG around. If this does not sound like fertile ground for a Warhammer 40,000 game, I have no idea what does. Imagine the RPG systems in a Warhammer 40,000 game like this. Upgrading your character and companions over time, exploring the 40k galaxy and fighting threats as you advance the wider story. One thing that I would be absolutely excited to see would be companion missions. Mass Effect 2 and 3 did these really well. Each companion had an issue they needed help with to set things right and get closure before they went on the suicide mission with you, because none of them expected to make it back, so they wanted to set things right before they went off and probably died in the story, right? For the most part, not Jacobs, the companion missions educated you on aspects of Mass Effect's lore. You would speak to your companions, and they would tell you about where they come from and their cultures in a natural way, because you're not used to speaking to aliens. And then you would head off and eventually help them resolve an issue that was unique to them and their culture. By the time you've finished Mass Effect 2, you are very well versed in the lore of the universe. Imagine the intake of fans for 40k if this kind of game existed for our favourite grimdark setting. It would be gargantuan. I know a lot of you will be thinking, I'm not sure I like that idea. But we need to get over that, guys. Our hobby is very, very popular. And if this game is done in the right way, it would invite people into the setting and it would show them the grimdark stuff. And it would show it to them in a respectful, adult way in which they could engage with it. Do you know what I mean? And the more coarse aspects of 40k are learned by the player through osmosis rather than shock value. This is what we would term a gateway drug to Warhammer 40,000, right? It would be a game that shows people exactly what 40k is, where it comes from, what it's doing, and what's grimdark about it, and what's awesome about it, as you go on through the game. You learn by doing. You learn through osmosis. By the end of this Warhammer 40,000 game, you will be, if you'd never heard of 40k before, you'll be quite well versed in the lore. You'll be knowing what's going on. You know what I mean? But if you are a fan, you've just been having the time of your life and just getting on with the game and loving it. That's all well and good. But I've not really talked about one thing. What would this game that I'm trying to pitch actually look and play like? Alright then. So who would you play as? What would it look like? Let's dive into it. I would have you start the game as an interrogator. Now, if you don't know what an interrogator is, that is an apprentice to an inquisitor. So you're a part of the inquisitorial class, and you're a part of becoming an inquisitor, right? And you are an apprentice, an inquisitor, to one Gregor Eisenhorn. Yes, that Eisenhorn, the main inquisitor we all know and love. By the time of this game, he is about 200 to 300 years old. He's very old, okay? This game is set just before the Great Rift. So, in the last days of 8th edition, basically, or 7th edition. That's when the game is set. And Gregor Eisenhorn is on his last legs. He's mostly in a wheelchair, but he can still get up and walk around on his canes and stuff. He's still a badass, you know? And he's still considered one of the main inquisitors of the Ordo Xenos, which is who you are working for. You are his last hope to carry on his legacy, as all interrogators he takes on are kind of cursed, because they keep dying. Or they end up like Ravenor, where they're so, you know, crispified up and near death that they're not really able to be inquisitors anymore. The only one who was capable of doing that was Ravenor, and even he had a lot of potential taken away from him. If you don't know who Ravenor is, Ravenor was Gregor's first big apprentice. And he was a better psyker than Eisenhorn. He was very good looking. He was very jovial. He was very... everybody seemed to like him, and he was doing really well. His skills with the blade were unmatched, and his skills as an investigator and an inquisitor were also unmatched. It seemed like he was going to be the shining light of the Imperium going forwards, and then he's nearly burnt to a crisp in a terror action at a parade, right? He's nearly killed, and he's crippled and confined to a chair for the rest of his life. And he's so cool, he still becomes an inquisitor. He's still an inquisitor after all that, you know? That's how powerful he is. But there is a lot of missed potential there. Well, in this game, you are on a similar power level to Ravenor and what he was. Okay? You are on a similar power level. But, unlike Ravenor, you won't have your potential stolen away from you. You're going to be able to rise up and do some good things. In the opening of the game, you are given the option to create your character on Eisenhorn's ship and pick your background. So essentially, you know, you're walking through the ship in first person. You can do it in third or first person, right? And one dude says, you know, I need your records, you know, to let you into deeper parts of the ship. there's been a mishap, you know, we need to get your records on file again. And you go, okay, and you literally go into a scanner, and you build your character from there. So, you pick your background, okay? So that's basically the world you're from, your personality, like your training, where you grew up. Were you a guardsman? Alright? Were you a psyker? Were you brought up as a spacer? Were you brought up on an agri world? You know, all this stuff you work out during this part of the game when you're making your character. And all of your gender, all that's fun stuff. And all of these choices will come up in dialogue during the game. So, you know, a fellow spacer, if you're talking on a spaceship, will be nice to you if he knows that you know spacer slang, right? A tech adept of the Adeptus Mechanicus will like you a lot more if you got a lot of, you know, bionic parts and you were a tech adept yourself before you went into the Inquisitorial service. Things like that. Other people like you will look kindly upon you. Psychers will be off-putting to some or even most people because you're terrifying, you're a psyker, right? And some people will outright distrust you, whereas psychic gnolls, if you choose to be one, will be off-putting to everyone. But they will never take damage from psychic attacks. That kind of thing. From here, you were introduced to other interrogators who were hoping to impress Eisenhorn and become his heir, and you are sent on an introduction mission to figure out a Xenos threat going on within a space station on the outskirts of the sector that you will be playing in. And as you lead teams in there, you see your fellow interrogators torn apart one by one by gene stealers. Tyranids. You are the only survivor and manage to bring down the space station, detonating it from within and escaping back to the ship. So, we've been introduced to the main big bad of what's going on in the game. We've taken you through your character creation. We've taken you through how combat works in the game. We've taken you through how the dialogue wheel works. We will have a dialogue wheel similar to Mass Effect and playing through that, right? Taking you through all of that, and then you're back to Eisenhorn. From here, Eisenhorn takes you as his sole interrogator, and the game opens up. As you go on missions with Eisenhorn, you will uncover a wider conspiracy going on that can lead to chaos across the sector. Now, it remains to be seen, right? Eisenhorn can't move like he used to, and you become the main muscle. You become his main dude, his point man that he sends out there, right? To do his dirty work with companions that Eisenhorn has hand-selected to be a part of his crew. Essentially, I'd like to keep this first game in the series very simple in terms of overall threat and plot. It's the Tyranids, right? There is a Hive fleet on the way, and you encountered the first bits of the Hive fleet where you were on that space station, but the politics of this sector means that an all-out civil war breaks out, and Eisenhorn, already ancient with age, is assassinated and killed at the end of the first act in front of you by a rogue Vindicare assassin working for the Separatists, working for the people who are essentially, this is like Vrax, right? So it's not quite chaos, but there are Separatists who've gone insane and they want to take their own sector and pull it away from the Imperium. So, Eisenhorn leaves his ship, his crew, his companions, and his status as an Inquisitor to you as his heir in his will. You are sworn in by your colleagues and the Lord Inquisitor of the sector as Eisenhorn's heir, and here, at the end of the first act, the sector opens up and you can take on your ship anywhere in the sector, but you are confined to the sector because the rest of the Inquisition are off to Cadia, because something big is going down there, and they're needed there, and we're not far from Cadia in this sector, right? So they've gone off, and most of the Inquisitors have gone off to fight whatever's going on, because Cadia's gone quiet, and nobody knows why, right? So it's your job to stay here and hold shit together for us, and hold the Tyranids off, if you can, as an Inquisitor, and we'll be back soon, right? That's what they say, essentially. It is your job to unite the sector and turn its guns away from each other and against the incoming Tyranid threat. You can do this with an open hand or a closed fist. You will make decisions that will stay with you long after you play the game, some of them very morally complex and quite dark. You forge a reputation amongst the sector and, in so doing, become a known figure throughout a large swathe of the Imperium due to your actions, as you lead the sector by unifying them through good leadership, or complete fear of you, or a combination of both, right? Against the final battle with the Tyranids as they finally show up. The final battle sees your forces take on the invading Tyranids, and you survive the onslaught, but the sector is obviously devastated by the war, losing many allies along the way, but the sector is largely saved. At the end of the game, Cadia, in another sector of the galaxy, finally falls, and the Great Rift splits the galaxy in two. You have heard in passing about Abaddon and his 13th Black Crusade, and fighting against him is the main reason why there are so few forces in your sector to take on the Tyranids. You head away from your sector, determined to do what you can to hold the Imperium together, which sets up our first sequel. Alright? So, during the game, you will have companions either already in your crew, thanks to Eisenhorn, or joining your crew, including a battle sister of the Adeptus Sororitas having a crisis of faith. 2 Imperial Guardsmen, 1 man and 1 woman, who show you what it's like growing up in one of the worlds within the Imperium. A battle priest of the Ecclesiarchy. A failed aspirant to the Ultramarines, essentially somebody who didn't quite make it to be a Marine and is haunted by that failure. A female navigator who shows you how the noble navigator houses operate, and the Golden Throne / Astronomicon, and some of the warp. A male assassin of the Vindicare Temple, and a female assassin of the Calidus Temple. Each of these companions is a walking lore explanation of where they come from and why those things are important in our setting. They all have their own personalities, and some do not get along with each other. They are all romanceable in some way and have their own unique drawbacks and advantages in combat. Although not all of those romance scenes end in some sort of sex scene, right? The relationship with the Battle Sister, for example, is more of a soulmate sort of thing. But her body belongs to Battle and the Emperor, whilst her, her soulmate can be you, right? That's how that works, Combat in the game would resemble Mass Effect Andromeda, if you've ever played that game. It's squad-based, but has fast-paced and hard-hitting combat with psychic powers flying across the battlefield amongst hammering torrents of gunfire and blades. You are a high-powered team of mercs. Only the top dudes of this sector should be standing against you, really, even though you can die in other places if you're pretty careless. So that's my game. What do you reckon? What do you reckon? Would you buy this? Would you buy this? I would also have... I did interject and put in one more companion. But I was wondering whether not to or whether to. If you've never read Eisenhorn, stop listening here, right? But one of your companions that you get during the game is Cherubale. He is the demon host of the Eisenhorn books. And Cherubale finds you because somebody killed Eisenhorn. And he's pissed off, because Cherubale quite likes Eisenhorn, as you know from the end of the Eisenhorn novels, right? They're kind of like a ridiculous pairing, but they, Eisenhorn earned the respect of Cherubale towards the end of that, and Cherubale kept him alive and did all these other things. And you start to learn more dark things about Eisenhorn as the game progresses, so he wasn't quite the paragon of virtue that you knew, and Cherubale starts that process. Cherubale also, as a demon host, can feel Abaddon the Despoiler winning on Cadia, and he foreshadows to you just what the hell is going to go on when Cadia falls, and when it does, Cherubale finally says, I've done my bit, I kept you alive, as a favour to Eisenhorn and his spirit that is currently screaming in the warp, as you all do when you die. Now I'm off, because I'm going to be one of the main antagonists of the second game. See you later, and he's off, right? We have a kind of Solus at the end of Dragon Age Inquisition thing going on, where we lose Cherubale at the end of the game because he goes off to join the Chaos side, right? So, that is my Warhammer 40,000 epic role-playing game, made by a company the size of probably a CD Projekt Red or somebody like that, who can come along, take the game and make it this grim-dark, epic fantasy, well, epic, from want of a better word, right? So, there we are. That is my game. What do you reckon? Am I bonkers? Have I gone completely mad? Do you reckon this game could ever be made, or will it be ever made by anyone in particular? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below. I love you a long time, and I'll speak to you tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares. Have a good one. Bye now.